And the countdown for some reason is broken. I don't know. It hates me. Welcome back to another panel of Utah Remote Con number 2, where we are supporting the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. If you guys haven't been able to donate yet, please make sure to go over to givebutter.com/Utah Remote Con 2, and then place your guys' raffles in there. We are giving away some great prizes that have been donated from different local stores, artists, coffee shops, you name it. So thank you all for who have donated in that sense, as well as helping us get to our goal of $1,500 for this amazing charity. We've already received $925. We're $75 short of 1,000. So please help. Make sure to donate if you can. And let's talk about our raffle prize, which is going to be oh no, I lost the page. Oh, this is the worst. All right, there it is. All right, we've got Superman Legos and a $20 gift card to Tony's Burger, which I've been to Tony's a couple times, and their burgers are absolutely fantastic. So let's talk with our panelists here. We have DC Animations. Hey guys.
It's just DC animated movies, Colin. DC Animations makes it sound weird. I don't know.
It makes it sound like we're the ones that made it.
Yeah, like we're DC Animations, and we're not.
It's, you know what? It's fine. I'll let you guys be the experts and talk about that, because obviously I don't know what I'm talking about right now. I'm wearing an Iron Man shirt, so
yeah, I noticed that in the last panel. Like, who shows up to a DC panel wearing an Iron Man shirt?
When you're talking about the Snyder Cut,
it's the villain who does that. The villain shows
the villain
up.
does that. Yeah. You want to know how to dress for a DC panel? Just look at our man Robert Neal. Look at this. He's looking sharp tonight as Green Lantern.
Yeah, he is.
John Stewart in the house right here with us.
My favorite Green Lantern.
There you go.
You're my new best friend.
Right.
Sorry,
I'm
Colin.
getting out of your guys' way. Have fun.
That's right. We are talking about DC animated movies, and this is a safe space. I feel like I'm with some DC fans here. I watched the Snyder Cut panel for a few minutes, the last panel, and listen, everybody's a little harsh on it, and I get it. But we're talking about some movies that I think, like, if you're not familiar with DC and their superheroes, and your only exposure is what you've seen recently in the theaters, like, this is where you need to go to get some better exposure to the DC universe and their heroes. And I think you'll find it's a little bit, I don't know. I like the DC animated movies. I don't know. What do you guys think about the animated universe that they've put together through DC?
It is
For the most part, good.
Top notch.
Very well written.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Robert. For the most part, it's pretty good. There's a couple of kind of stinkers in there where, especially some of the earlier ones, like if you go back to like early, and they've done like the Superman Doomsday, for example, isn't super great.
I think that after the New 52 reboot of the DC universe, when they started doing things along those lines, as much as I didn't care for much of the New 52, what they did with the animated universe was fantastic. And if you want to go before that, their 2009 Wonder Woman movie from Lauren Faust was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and if you guys don't know, if this is kind of your introduction into the DC animated movies, like, they've been doing this since the early or mid 2000s, and where Marvel has kind of built up their cinematic universe, DC has quietly been putting together this really great collection of movies, and they've really taken from a lot of the classic stories that we really enjoy in the comics and said, hey, let's just make these one-off movies. And some of them tie together. Like, they've tried to tie more of the later ones together, but for the most part, they really don't. So let's start just by, what's your favorite? Why don't we just go around and share what our favorite DC animated movie is, if you have one? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Wow. I don't know that I have one. I think I've got a top three.
Okay. What's your top three?
The Wonder Woman from 2005, Green Lantern First Flight,
Hmm.
and Under the Red Hood.
Okay.
Good one.
Those are all solid choices. What about you, James?
I really loved Under the Red Hood myself. I can't remember the name of it. Dadgum. It was Superman. Superman versus Manchester Black and his crew. I can't
Superman
remember.
versus the Elite.
Thank you. Superman versus the Elite. I really liked that one. I thought that was a very good one. And I loved the Flashpoint Paradox movie.
Okay.
I thought that was amazing, especially seeing Thomas Wayne on screen as Batman. That was a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Flashpoint story. And I like the movie quite a bit. They did a good job capturing like the Superman character who has been locked away for years and years in the war between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, and like it's really well done for sure.
Oh yeah.
What about you, Blake?
I would say you guys stole some that I would definitely have picked, but I would say Justice League War, the one that kind of started as Robert was saying, the New 52 movies kind of started being good, you know. That was a really good movie, I thought, to kind of reintroduce the fan base. That one was one of my favorites.
Cool.
It was a good one, yeah. Jake, question for you. So since we've gone into the New 52 part of the animation, what did you think of how they closed out the New 52 era?
In the animated movies or
In the
just
animated
in
movies.
general? I think they did good with it. I mean it was fine.
It just seemed like, to me, it just seemed like an interesting bookend because they brought in, they started just right into the New 52, but then towards the end of it, I can't remember what the last movie was in that series, Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Where, Barry realizes something's wrong and the only way to fix it is to go back and change things again. It was just kind of like, that was a nice touch, and it was a good way to move into the current slate of DC animated movies as well.
Yeah, and I think that they did a good job kind of following, because that was similar to how they wanted to try to wrap it up in the comics. And I think it was I thought it was great, number one, that they went into the New 52 stuff. And because I think one of the things that I like about the animated movies is they really, I think, bridge the gap a lot more between the mainstream and the comic book readers. And so if you are watching the movies, the animated movies, and you want to go find those stories in comic books, they're pretty accessible and it's pretty easy to get into whatever the current arc is. And so it was great that they took Flashpoint and built the New 52 in the movies as well. And the Superman looked like Superman in the New 52, and Batman looked like Batman in the New 52. And then I like that as the comics went away from that the movies decided to go away from that as well. So again, now if I'm a casual, like I'm going to sit down, I'm much more likely to watch a 2-hour animated movie than I am to go out and read a 20 comic arc. It might bring me over into the comic books a little bit, which is awesome. Which is interesting. Oh, go ahead.
That's exactly what happened with my wife. When I was first dating my wife, she was kind of nerdy, but she definitely wasn't into comics. Mm-hmm. And the first movie I wanted to watch with her that I thought would be nerdy that she would want to watch is Flashpoint. So we watched that together. And now my wife constantly, anytime animated movies gets brought up, she's like, you should go watch Flashpoint. You should go watch Flashpoint. Flashpoint's really good. Flashpoint's a really good movie. And so you're right. You're exactly right. Like it brings casual fans into the genre and allows them to experience it in a way that is palatable for them, that is easily accessible,
Yeah. I think a good example for me too is the Death and Return of Superman that just came out recently, where they went through the story arc of Superman dying and then the 4 Supermen that came back. And so you get Steel and you get Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator and Superboy. And like, this was such a huge pivotal moment in the history of Superman as a comic book fan. Like, you need to know this story. But if you're new to Superman and you've never read the story and you go back and you read some of those 90s comics, like, they're weird to read now. Like,
yeah, definitely.
One, you go back and you read, and it's Doomsday versus the Justice League of America. And at that point, it was a very different looking Justice League. Like, it didn't have Batman and Aquaman and Green Lantern. And And so this makes that story kind of brings the highlights of that story together and makes it a little bit more palatable, like you said, Blake, for someone who isn't familiar with the 90s storyline at all. Because if you go back, I mean, the 90s comics they're just like the 70s comics and the 80s comics. They're a product of their time, and you just kind of, unless you grew up with them, they're just a little bit weird.
I was going to say that because my friends and I actually grew up with those the death of Superman and the return of Superman coming out on the newsstands, as it were. We read those as they came out. So to me, it wasn't that strange at all. But for someone who didn't grow up with them, yeah, they'd be weird.
Yeah.
So
like all of a sudden Superman comes back and he's got long hair and, anyway.
Right.
Mullet Superman.
Yeah, Mullet Superman. I liked Mullet Superman. He had some good storylines.
Yeah, Mullet Superman and Ponytail Clark Kent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And still nobody could figure out that Clark Kent is
Glasses,
Superman.
man. It's all in the glasses.
It's in the glasses and the mannerisms, man. I will die on this hill that just Superman is so good at being Clark Kent that nobody guesses that he's Superman. I'm fine with it. What I think another one of my favorite things about the animated movies is because they don't try to stick to a strict timeline, you get some of these kind of weird offshoots. Like I was cruising through HBO Max the other day, and they had, was it like Samurai Batman or Ninja Batman?
Ninja Batman.
Yes.
That film is a trip, man. Like I put that on. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to watch it. And it was so good. And that's just something that you can't do in the movies necessarily. Like you can't release in a movie theater, okay, here's Ninja Batman, and have everybody like, okay, yeah, this is fine. No problem.
Well, I think that one of the things is the freedom that they have in doing an animated movie, in either adapting a storyline, and if anything goes wrong, they can kind of go, it's an Elseworlds, it's not canon, and just kind of go, yeah, we just won't talk about that. But for the most part, I would say that like 95% of the animated movies, especially in the last 15 years, have been really solid.
Yeah, they have.
Now, that does not include Wonder Woman Bloodlines. Well, that's just a bad one. But, right. I mean, almost everything else fits. And even the new one that just came out, Justice Society, War, or Justice Society.
World War II.
Pardon me?
The new World War II.
Yeah. Justice Society, World War II. That's the one. Was completely out there a bit, a little Flashpoint-ish, but still just a really fun, solid story.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you like that one? I haven't seen it yet.
I actually quite did. It was not the story I expected, but I will say that if you've watched the Justice League animated series before it became Justice League Unlimited, they did a 2-part episode where they crossed over, and it was kind of like a parallel universe with an almost Justice Society. This movie reminded me a lot of that. It had the same kind of heart, the same kind of feel, and it was just fun to see something that different.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's definitely one I'm going to check out. So
I give it a definite thumbs up with an okay.
We've got a couple of comments. Shout out from Sean Ricks, who's taking a break from his art auction to watch you guys, to watch us. That's how cool we are. Well, thank you, Sean. We hope that your auction is going well, whether you're buying or selling, whatever it is you're doing at this auction. I hope that you're successful.
He's selling.
We are cool. We are DC Animations.
Yeah, we are DC Animations, right? We put those cool DC animated movies out there for you.
Colin will never live that down.
I originally read his comment as he was at an ant auction, like A&T auction. I didn't know what that was, but it was an art auction. So that's. We have a Facebook user who says the animated films need a Snyder cut to make it really great.
Fired.
I'd love it. It'd be great.
But that's what makes the animated movies so great, is because you can get different artists, you can get different visions in this sandbox, and they can really just do whatever they want. Like you could have a Snyder cut and it doesn't feel out of place because there's so many different styles already out there. And it's just a movie, and you just say, like you said, Robert, well, that's just Elseworlds, so it's fine. Like, and that's why they can do movies like Red Sun, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Because I love that graphic novel.
James, going back to your thing about Superman versus the Elite.
Yes.
I remember the story when it was done in Action Comics, and it was done that one issue of Superman taking on the Elite was so tight and so well done The one thing that bothered me about the animated movie was the animation style. It took away from it a bit for me because they were trying to do like Ed Madureira's style.
Yeah.
And it didn't work for me. I mean, the story was still right there, but it was just like, I'm having a hard time watching this.
That was an issue for me as well. I had to look past that and say, this is a little hard to look at, but the story I'll follow. The story's good, but the animation's not for me.
Yeah, not what I expected from DC Animation.
No.
Jake,
I'm sorry. Are you wearing a Rush shirt?
Yes.
You were definitely my new best friend.
I got this. I got taken to their last show, last tour, Clockwork Angels.
Yes, beautiful. That was an excellent tour. Sorry, didn't mean to derail the conversation, guys. We'll talk offline.
Rush is always an appropriate tangent. We can always go off on Rush. That's totally fine. And as far as DC Animation not being very good on that one, listen, we'll try harder. All right.
We'll do our best.
We'll do our best and try to get something better put together for you.
I was going to say, Jake made a comment the other day on Facebook. You said something like, you're still waiting for the Kingdom Come animated movie.
Yes.
Which I'm all for, but how do you make Alex Ross make a movie? Like, I couldn't watch it if it's not Alex Ross art. I'd be so distracted the whole time.
It's so funny that you say that because when I made the comment, I put it out there and then I saw it later and I thought to myself, well, except it would look like crap because it wouldn't be Alex Ross. I mean, unless he did the animation, which I don't think he does animation.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
But I love that story so much and I would love to see it come to life someday in some way. But I don't know how you do it. Yeah. I don't trust the studio to make a movie out of it. So I'd rather see the animated studios do it. But yeah, I don't know. But whoever did the artwork for Superman versus the Elite can't come anywhere near Kingdom Come. No. Like they're not allowed. Like they're just forbidden.
So I'm curious, did you guys start with the TV shows? Because that's how I started. Like animated series, Batman, Superman.
Yeah.
I started with Static Shock. Static Shock still holds up today.
Wow. You see, you're going to make me date myself because I started with like the stuff that was out in the 60s and 70s.
I feel like the ones I mentioned are the beginnings of the current art.
Yeah.
No, right.
You know, we still have Kevin Conroy, we still have Tim Daly, we still have, you know,
Bruce Timm's involved.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the 90s stuff was definitely what got me started with new which gave me the inroads to want to see the animated movies. But the animated movies took on a life of their own because they did something you couldn't do with the TV series, and that's have an R rating and actually be brutally violent. I mean, Under the Red Hood, as a comic or a graphic novel, violent story. And you could not really do that justice on TV, especially as a kid's show.
On Cartoon Network, yeah.
Yeah, but you make it a direct-to-video release, and you can go, we're going to slap an R rating on this and tell the story, and they did, and they didn't pull very many punches.
No.
I remember when they originally killed off Robin in the comics, it made newspapers, and people were shocked about it.
Because the fans did it.
Right.
The fans killed him.
Right. It
was a call in and vote.
And I remember thinking when I actually glimpsed that in the newspaper, I was like, they can't kill Robin on the Super Friends. They're not going to do that. And years and years later, I see this movie come out. I'm like, are they finally going to do it? Are they going to? And they did. I was like, oh, that's brutal. I love this. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Which shows you how much of a twisted adult I am.
Well, but I mean, Jason Todd passing was such a huge part of who Batman was and became such a huge part of his character. That I could understand wanting to see that not necessarily see the act of him getting killed play out, but the story of the impact and what that means. I can totally get that. You know, it's funny because you think about the Batman, the animated series, and you start out with Robin as Dick Grayson. And by the end you get Tim Drake as Robin and Dick is Nightwing, but there's never any mention of Jason Todd. They just gloss right over that like he never existed. That's how they dealt with it prior to, Under the Red Hood.
Yep.
And they've apparently gone back and retconned the comics because they've done a continuation of the New Batman Adventures, which was the series that spun off of Batman the Animated Series, and they've retconned Jason back in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Did they do
And
the whole
I
Lazarus bit
haven't been
thing?
reading it, so I can't tell you how they did it. I just know they brought him back in, and they discussed what happened to him, but I'm not sure exactly all the details of how they did it.
Yeah. And that is the one thing that the animated movies were able to do, that Warner Brothers up to that point hadn't been willing to do, and that's, like you said, put that R rating on there and deal with some of those heavier stories. Like we aren't going to see, or probably weren't going to see for a while, Killing Joke on the big screen, right? But you could put that into an animated movie, even if you're going to make it weird.
Which they did.
What was weird about it?
Yeah, what was weird? I only showed up for the second half. It seemed great.
Well, you should go back and watch the first
Oh,
half.
okay.
We can at least appreciate the fact that Mark Hamill was a boss in that film.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The best Joker freaking ever.
I actually would say that some of my favorite performances are in the animated movies. Like I think Mark Hamill's Joker is better than Heath Ledger. I just love him as the Joker, and maybe that's because that's how I grew up. You know, I grew up with him. He is my Joker, and so there's maybe some nostalgia with that. Kevin Conroy is my Batman. I don't care what you say. Yeah. So
okay, but who's your Superman? George Newbern or Tim Daly?
Tim Daly.
Yeah,
okay. Tim Daly, I think Superman.
Yeah. I mean, okay, Christopher Reeve is my Superman.
Well, okay. That goes without saying.
Yeah,
he's the Hall of Fame status.
But, we're talking about voice actors here, there, Jake.
Well, no, but Blake was saying that Mark Hamill is his Joker, not Heath Ledger, and I just want to make sure and clarify. I'm fine with saying Tim Daly is the right choice for Superman, as long as
Christopher Reeve is number one and always will be.
Yeah.
I named my son Henry Reeve Lisman.
Oh, wow.
So Christopher Reeve is the man.
Nice.
That's very cool.
I like Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern in the times that he's been in as Hal Jordan, and they do get these great voice talents in there that play these great roles that you wouldn't see the same acting on the screen. I mean, because when you're casting for Superman on the big screen, or you're casting for you're looking for a specific look instead of a voice and an acting style, and with these movies you can get something very different, which is great. I think it opens the door for some great performances.
Yeah, it does.
Something else with the movies that they've done that I thought has been interesting is tackle issues in a couple of them. One that comes to mind is the Justice League versus the Fatal Five, where they deal with mental illness and PTSD with Starboy from the Legion of Superheroes and Jessica Cruz from the Justice League. And they didn't shy away from it. They were like, Starboy has a mental condition that requires certain medication, and when he can't get it, certain things happen. And they dealt with Jessica's PTSD, although they adapted it a little bit. They didn't go into the full details of like her comic book counterpart, but you understood what she was dealing with some of her anxiety issues and the things that came out that stemmed out of that. And they were forefront. It wasn't something like, we're going to talk about this and then never mention it again. It was consistent with the characterizations the portrayals of the characters in those movies.
Why do you think that like the animated studios can get away with going down those roads easier than, the movies?
Because this is America, and animation is a kids medium to a lot of people. And so they can, a lot of people will dismiss it out of hand as, oh, that's not the real Superman or the real Batman or the real Justice League, or this is just kids stuff, and move on.
I also think too, it helps that they're usually based off of comics. They're not original content. They're stories that have already been written, and so they're just adapting a story that's already been made. And so I think people are a little bit more lenient in that regard, because they're like, oh, it's already made. So why would we be upset that they are using these themes that are not new? Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's a great point, Robert, too, about it is a kid's medium. And so people aren't going to give it the same seriousness and the same thought.
And I think then the studios just don't have the same expectations. Like, we're not expecting this to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
And so we don't really care as much what you put out there. You know, we just want it to fill whatever time slot we need it to fill, and put it out. So yeah, it's interesting. I thought the same thing as far as tackling some difficult issues with like how America views itself and how that's changed over time when I was watching Red Son, because he really brings a lot of that to light, right? I mean, when he talks about, you know, you guys think you're so great, but look at what you're actually doing. And it's just really interesting, the two sides of the propaganda that's being spewed in that movie.
And the direct dialogue that's related to things people are saying today. Like,
yeah. Like,
very powerful.
That comes out in the theater, and you're going to have, you know, certain groups on Twitter just making a stink like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it would make the Brie Larson fiasco look, and I don't mean that it was a fiasco. She was great, but it would look like the fanboy vitriol toward her was nothing compared to what that would be if that were to come out on the theater. So I think it's interesting, and I love that they can tackle some of those issues, and I hope that they continue to do that. We talked about Kingdom Come. What would be a dream story that you would love to see them adapt to an animated movie? And if you say Long Halloween, that's cheating.
It was one that I think was really overlooked, and I really, 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 really loved the New 52 Wonder Woman. I loved that comic series.
That's a good one.
It takes place in it's really Greek mythology heavy. And I think it's one that people didn't read, and it didn't get as much love that it deserved. And I think in an animated form, it would be really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they could do that pretty easily, even though they've kind of moved past New 52, because it doesn't necessarily have to take place in the New 52 time. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be an Elseworld kind of thing, you know.
I'll stick with Wonder Woman on this one. Odyssey, the 12-issue arc they did between the previous era in New 52, where they completely reinvented Diana, I thought was an interesting one. That could be a fun one to do. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow for Superman would be a fun one. And to bring Batman, actually to bring the Trinity in, what do you get, The Man Who Has Everything? The story with the Trinity and Mongol.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a great one.
I would like to see. There's one I remember that was written by Neil Gaiman called "Whatever Happened to the Dark Knight," where it starts with Batman's funeral, and it goes from there, and you hear all these different reports of how the Dark Knight died, and it's a fascinating piece of work, and you get glimpses of the Flashpoint Joker and the Flashpoint Batman in there, and you get a glimpse of Alfred as the Joker, and you get a glimpse of Alfred bringing in people to play these different rogues gallery villains that Batman faces, because Batman, or Bruce Wayne, you know, when his parents got killed in front of him, had a mental break, and the only way he can deal with this mental break is to go out into the night dressed as this character, this thing, but there's no one for him to fight. I think it's a fascinating piece of work. So I'd love to see that adapted.
What did you say that's called? I don't think I've read that.
Whatever Happened to the Dark Knight, or Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader. Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader.
It was a 2-issue arc that Gaiman wrote.
Yeah.
Dude, I love Neil Gaiman, so I'm definitely going to check that out.
I was going to say, I'm here for anything by Neil Gaiman. Like,
yeah.
I'm on board with
something else that could be interesting. We'd like do something outside of the realm that anyone else is out of comics would know, and do like the New Gods. And I mean, they've already introduced Darkseid. You've seen, you've heard talk of some of the other New Genesis gods from some of the other stories or other movies, but bring in the New Gods and actually, you know, do some Fourth World stuff with for Jack Kirby stuff.
That'd be cool.
That would be awesome. I don't think people understand how much of the cosmic world there is in DC Comics compared to to Marvel, and that they've been doing it probably longer than Marvel has. But because we haven't, I mean, Marvel's taken the leap with the Eternals. I would love to see the New Gods in some form or fashion, and I think animated is, I mean, right now from DC, my choice of fashion for anything that they make.
Do you guys think that the Marvel animated movies aren't as good as the DC?
Yeah,
The
so
Marvel animated movies.
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
I mean, to use that point, somebody, a friend of mine watched the Avengers, the big screen Avengers, and then went back and watched Marvel's Ultimate Avengers and Ultimate Avengers 2, and was like, so let me get this straight. This movie came out, the animated movies came out first, and then this movie came out. Did Joss Whedon just watch these and then make a movie? Because it was the exact same story, and nobody who really made it any kind of a hullabaloo about that.
He probably did, knowing Joss Whedon. He probably did. Just kidding. Marvel has not put together the strong slate of movies yet that we've seen animated wise, which is really too bad, because honestly, I would love to see them take some of their characters that, now that Disney owns them, you're probably not going to see as much on the big screen. Like, I'd love to see them take, since they're done with Netflix, take a Daredevil animated series and put it out there, or an animated movie, or any of the Defenders. I'd love to see a Wolverine animated movie that goes into his time in Japan, where he's becoming samurai and things like stuff like that would be so interesting, that they're never going to make a movie of that stuff, but they totally could make an animated movie.
I also think it's interesting because, just like the DC TV shows are what I grew up with X-Men, I grew up with Spider-Man, and those were phenomenal TV shows. Like those, the X-Men theme song is the greatest theme song of all time. And so
as much as I love DC, I agree with that 100%.
I think it's interesting that they weren't able to make the transition the way DC was to animated films. And I think probably because they have such a heavy focus on their live action films.
Well, I think that's part of it. And I think the other thing that people don't think about with Marvel compared to DC is has for a very long time been 100% in-house, the same company. Like Warner Brothers owns DC and has owned DC for a very long time, whereas Marvel was just a comic book company, and they were kind of putting their titles out there to whoever would come along and produce something. And so because they weren't as in-house for a long time until Disney bought them, I think that's another reason why you can see like DC was like, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll put animated movies out there while we're making live action movies, because they were already all under the same umbrella, and Marvel has had more complications legally speaking.
Two things there, though. I mean, Marvel was a comic book company, but when they were trying to license their characters, when they were hemorrhaging money in the late 80s and early 90s, they sold off a lot of licenses to those characters to whoever would get it, which is why Spider-Man now has, two parent companies, for example, in the movies. And not only that, excuse me, Marvel, with Disney, with the influx of Disney buying them, now has the buying power to go back and say, well, we're going to do this, or try to get these licenses back. But with everybody still having, like Universal having some characters, Sony having some characters, Marvel's kind of has their hands tied behind their back with being able to use certain characters in certain ways.
Yeah, which is why you'll see a Spider-Man ride at Disneyland in California, but you're going to have to go to Universal to see a Spider-Man ride in Florida. It's just bizarre licensing stuff that's just weird.
Also, Into the Spider-Verse is a cinematic masterpiece.
Yes.
I'm just going to say.
I agree.
Yes.
That is a Marvel animated that is phenomenal. So.
Yeah, but
is it Marvel too?
Well, it is, and I think the reason why I like Into the Spider-Verse probably more than any other Marvel animated movie is because it's so different. And the other Marvel animated movies, it seems like what they've done is like, we're almost like you pointed out, Robert, like they're testing out the story idea that maybe might show up in a movie later, or is this character marketable enough to show up in the next Avengers movie or whatever. And it's almost like a testing ground or something to build up what they're doing in the movies. Into the Spider-Verse wasn't that at all. It
Mhm.
was just this weird
It
story.
was a fun
that was
Spider-Man
amazing.
movie for the most
Yeah,
part.
Yeah.
You would
And
think if they were smart that they would look at what DC is doing and say, hey, that's working for them. Let's do this over here. And
But
actually
that's a
make
double-edged
stuff.
sword, though, because
true.
DC has done that, or Warner Brothers has done that, going, Marvel's just throwing, just making buckets of money. Let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
yeah,
And we've gotten some not great cinematic pieces out of Warner Brothers from that.
Yeah, James didn't watch the last panel.
True, I was actually making dinner, so
I'm just teasing.
apologize.
Last panel was the Snyder cut, and
Yeah.
nobody liked it. So
Yeah.
that's the impression I'm getting.
and I like the Snyder Cut better than I liked the original Justice League movie.
I'm there with you on that one.
yeah.
But
Something else.
think- oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I
sorry.
was just going to say something else that I think that the animated features for DC has done well is adapt potentially difficult storylines,
Mhm.
like the Judas Contract.
Right.
It's like that's one, to be honest, when that came out in '84, reading, and I was old enough to read it when it was out originally. That's one that's like, much like I never thought I'd see certain TV shows with superheroes.
Mhm.
Never thought they would make a movie of the Judas Contract, but here it is, and it's pretty darn faithful to the original story, which 20 years ago, 30 years ago, would have been like, never going to happen.
Yeah. And yeah. And I think that that's one of the best things about the animated movies is they can take those kinds of stories and put them out there. And they can take some of these characters and put them out there in a way that they can't really do on the big screen or on a TV show or on a kid's show. I mean, Judas Contract, obviously you wouldn't put that anywhere near a kid's show.
No.
But like Justice League Dark, for example, there's a couple of Justice League Dark movies that are great and they're scary and they're just awesome. And these characters don't have the clout that you could draw in a huge audience in the movie theater necessarily right now. But man, they're enjoyable to watch for a couple hours in an animated movie.
Put John Constantine anywhere in a DC movie, man.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think they did a good job going back to your comments earlier about voice acting. The fact that they got Matt Ryan, who did the original series on NBC for Constantine, who's then been pulled into the, what do they call it now? The Arrowverse,
Yeah.
or the not Arrowverse anymore, or the CW verse.
Yeah, whatever it is now, the
Flashverse.
micro universe.
But he's the voice of the animated John Constantine as well. So you have that through line that runs through it, and he's the same arrogant prick that he was in the TV show and both the TV shows and even in the comic books to a lesser
It
degree.
works. It just works.
Yeah. He plays the character really well. And I love that they're willing to do that. Say, hey, this is somebody that we think would be great in this role, who's done really well in this role. Let's give him a shot, and that's awesome because his character was short-lived. Obviously his series didn't last long. And
Well, I mean, they should have never put it on NBC. I mean, it's not like NBC, Comcast, Universal didn't have any other place to put it, like USA, for example, or any of their other cable options. But we're going to just put it on broadcast TV.
Yeah. Like at first you're like,
My
yes, this
thoughts
means they have
exactly,
faith in they have faith in our product. And then it's like, no, they just want us to die a quick death because they put us right on the main network. It's interesting. I would like to see, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. I would like to see DC, instead of looking at Marvel and saying, this is what we need to do to compete with Marvel, I would like for them to look at their animated movies and say, okay, this is what's worked for our animated movies. Let's do that with our movies. And I feel like they're kind of moving in that direction. Jeff Johns seems to be kind of directing them that way, that like, hey, we're going to have standalone movies that aren't necessarily connected. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Would you like to see a big connected DC universe or more like the animated stuff, or both? I want them
to. This is what I think they should do, since we're DC Animations, so they need to listen.
Right.
To us.
So maybe they'll listen to us. We'll just go knock on the door for DC Studios and say, hey.
I think they need to make a Flashpoint movie as faithfully to the comic and the animated movie as they can, create a multiverse in the live action movies, and then you have free reign to make whatever you want. You can have some things that are a continuous canon. You can have some things that are, oh, that's Earth 57, you know, and it has nothing to do with anything. And then that would explain how you have the Joker and you have Ben Affleck as Batman, and then you have the new R. Pattinson Batman. You know, you have all these different multiverses, and that would explain it. And
well, I think they're kind of doing that, though.
That's what I've heard, is that's kind of the plan. Like Michael
It's kind of like very loosely connected, which is because the original time they brought that up was with Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, when they're like, it was like, it's not the Joker story that you're used to or that you're expecting, and it's a Joker movie without Batman. And everybody's like, how do you do a Joker movie without Batman? And they're like, this is the person who could have become the Joker that you know, but isn't necessarily that Joker. So I think that they finally figured out that moving away from the, this is the only universe like Marvel, and gone to more, we can tell stories with these characters and we can tell different stories, which is how we're going to wind up getting Ta-Nehisi Coates writing a Black Superman movie, which is not going to be Val Zod, which everybody thought originally, but it's going to be Kal-El, which my thought is that it's going to be Earth 23 Superman, Calvin Ellis, who's president of the United States in that world.
Yep.
And so if they go that route,
Yeah.
if they go that route with all these multiverses, they can very easily adapt these animated movies to live action, and it would make sense in the sense that they don't have to have a set canon the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe has.
Yep. Do you think moviegoers would go for it?
I will.
Well,
I think they will.
Sure, but I think this, and it's hard because I think this particular crowd that we're talking to right now, the four of us, we've read enough comics. You guys probably way more than me, but like we're used to this idea of like, okay, well, the story changed, or it's a multiverse, or it's this, or it's that. I just wonder if the average fan, if you start doing that, is going to be like, I'm totally confused now. How is there this Batman and this Batman, and how is there this Superman and this Superman? And
It's already happened.
yeah,
I mean, if you listen to some of the crowd reaction to a Black Superman,
yeah,
it's like it's not a new concept, for one, and two, I mean, if you want to go to the other side of the line, look at the last Fantastic Four movie, which I did not see, but I remember the backlash from, how is the Human Torch black? And it's like, if you look at it, from when these stories were originally done, most, if not all, the creators were white creators, so they drew characters that they related to up until the 60s and 70s, when they started integrating more and bringing in more diversity into the comics, which they've done a much better job of in the past 20 years. But really, it should just be like, so there's this character who has this power and does this thing, and I don't know that there are very many characters that their race really defines who they are as a hero necessarily, but you have a lot of people who just can't make that mental leap and just go, but no, Superman always been this way. Well, if you just take a Kryptonian and somebody winds up calling him Superman at some point for whatever reason, then it's the same kind of thing. Which, who did it? Stan Lee did it when they did Stan Lee creates the DC universe.
yeah, which was a wild ride.
Which was just kind of fun to see how different all of those characters were, but people were kind of like, it's an Elseworld, so they could, again, kind of dismiss it, but it was still just one of those interesting looks into what it could have been with different origins for the characters you've come to know and love over 80 years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it will cause confusion. I think that's part of the confusion when you watch some of the animated movies, is if you're trying to find a line of, okay, and you just have to research it out. Okay, these movies are connected and these movies aren't, and then you're okay. So I think it will, but I think it won't be insurmountable.
I also think it's a double-edged sword, You'll have some people that are confused, and you'll have some people that are like, thank goodness I don't have to watch 18 movies understand this one movie.
Yes.
I can just go and enjoy a Superman movie, and it doesn't have to have all this subplot and all this, So I think it could end up having both bad and good side effects to that.
And I think that's the real key, and I think that's what they need to do is try and simplify these movies down as much as they can and not make them as convoluted as Batman versus Superman was, which it was a mess. It was a hot mess.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun. If you watch the super duper long Snyder cut version of Superman versus Batman, it all makes sense and it's fine.
Okay.
It makes more sense at
it
least.
makes
I
more
will say it all makes sense.
I haven't watched it yet, so I'll take you at your word.
That's fine.
It's still not great, but I mean, it does make more sense.
But I think the big problem was that these movies, before the Snyder cut came along and cleared the waters, they were very muddy waters. They were just very convoluted.
Yeah.
So I think that's what DC needed to solve with their movies, and I think that's what the animated movies do is they cut through the convolution.
Yeah.
My thoughts, anyways.
No, I agree, and I think that's a great point. I think that the DC animated movies really they simplify it. They stick to a story. They stick to the source material. They're true to the source material. And if they can keep doing that moving forward, I think it'll be a good thing. And I hope that they continue to do that because I enjoy them and I want them to keep coming out. I mean, I'm looking forward to Long Halloween. I think that's the next big one that I'm really excited for.
Yes.
I think it'll be awesome. That's one of my favorite Batman stories out there. So it'll be fun to see how they put that into a movie. So any closing thoughts, anything you guys want to share before Colin jumps on here and takes over from us? I think
if anybody from DC Development is watching, do a Legion movie.
Yes.
Period. Full stop.
Okay. Perfect.
More Elseworld.
More Elseworlds. Period. Stop.
Well, we are DC Animation, so we'll just make it happen.
Okay, that works.
I'm down.
Did you guys see the announcement this week for the new Injustice animated movie?
Yes.
Yes.
I am apparently out of the loop. Everybody else is on. I need to look this up because I read those comics and oh my gosh, I was broken but so thrilled to read those.
And playing the video games and everything. I'm super stoked for that. I think that'll be, if they adapt it well, which in the past obviously animated they've done really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have faith that this one will be really good. I'm excited.
Especially if they do it as a multi-part, so you get different years, not trying to cram everything into one movie.
Yeah,
and you get to go on for a while. It could be a progression, or sorry, a series.
Well, and it might somewhat appease some of the Snyder fanboys because I think that was kind of the direction he was headed with his Justice League trilogy. Eventually, Superman was going to be the bad guy. So,
can we appease the Snyder fanboys though?
No,
is that possible?
No, and no. Let me just say that no fandom out there, no studio should ever try to just appease the fanboys because you just end up making crap. I mean,
Agreed.
and you're never going to satisfy them. You're never going to appease them. So, yeah,
that's exciting news. Thank you guys for sharing that with me.
Oh, yeah, it made his night.
I think that was where I commented about the Kingdom Comes. Like,
is that where I saw that? Yeah.
I think that's where that comment was. If I remember correct, I don't know.
It's
I
all
don't
on
follow myself on Facebook. I probably should.
It's all on Monday Morning Memory Wipe.
That's right. Yeah, which
go check that out. I'll plug them right now.
Yeah, there you go. Good plug for them. Well, I was thinking Colin would jump on here.
You should. You gave us the 5-minute warning.
Yeah. Well, hey, Colin.
I'm here. You guys were just having such a great conversation.
You've had.
I didn't want to interrupt. You still had a minute left.
You still haven't changed your shirt.
Minutes to change your shirt.
Changed my shirt.
No, he's doing it on purpose, guys. Great. He likes the attention. We should just ignore it.
True. I'm an attention seeker. I'm sorry, guys. It's fine though. You know, it's okay.
Fine. We still love you.
Oh, shucks. Thanks. Yeah, Jake has mixed feelings about me at this point. It's fine. It is what it is. But thank you guys so much. I do have one question for you guys though. If you guys had to pick a couple of starter animated movies, not animations, what would you guys say people should start off on? I know Flashpoint was one.
For what age group?
Yeah, that's
for adults.
For adults.
Under the Red Hood.
Under the Red Hood.
Under the Hood's good.
Death Return.
Yeah.
I would go with what I said at the beginning, Justice League War, because it starts the whole Justice League, so it's really like from the beginning. A person outside of the group that's a casual fan could watch that and would understand what's happening.
Yep.
Nice.
I think that's a good one.
Sweet. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate our DC animators here. We're definitely going to have another panel next year. I'm going to need to see some pitches for Utah RemoteCon 3 from each of you. It'll be great. Well, we have one more panel tonight. We have our DC What's Next. And then we're going to wrap up the night. But before we go, we do have the raffle, which, if I can get a drum roll, please, for our Superman Legos and Tony Burger's gift card. It is... Did you rig it, Jake?
Redraw it. If it's me, you got to redraw it.
It's you.
Yeah, you got to redraw it. Sorry.
All right, drum roll, please.
Is it Jake again?
It's just,
Just give it to him. Just give it to him.
Craig Price.
Perfect.
Nice.
We love Craig. And he's the host of Monday Morning Memory Wipe.
Yeah, he is.
And
There we
just
go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Make sure to check out his show. He's going to have a new episode on Monday. It'll get your Monday all started right.
That's right.
Is that little baby Henry?
That's little baby Henry.
Oh, hey,
Henry
little baby
Reeve.
Henry. What's up, little guy? So cute. All right, guys. Well, please make sure to stay for...
Christopher.
Yes. Make sure to stay for our next panel, Disney's What's Next. And
DC's
we will...
What's Next.
DC's What's Next.
Did I say Marvel?
You said
You
Disney.
said Disney, which is
What?
totally different.
Wow.
You just
I
wrote
also
on
haven't
that.
taken them over yet.
I'm tired, guys. It's a late night.
Yeah.
We still got one more panel to get through. All right. Well, DC's
I'm going to have to charge you for that one, Colin.
I know. Seriously. Here we go.
All right.